You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is a communications trainer and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share it with friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, today we're going to talk about nonlinear presentations. And in particular, you've mentioned that you have two tools that you want to talk about.
Yes.
About two tools that people can use for nonlinear presentations. And we've talked about nonlinear presentations before on this podcast, but just as a reminder for the audience, remind us, why is this important?
Good question. I would say it's important because it enables you as a presenter to actively include your audience in the flow of your presentation. So the whole experience becomes something that you can ask questions, something that you can ask for input to determine the flow of the topics, the order of the points of discussion. And I think it has two main advantages. The first one is, first of all, you include your audience. So you don't risk boring them from start to finish. Hey, I'm going to talk about this. So this is slide 1, and then slide 2, and then slide 3. So you don't put your audience into a situation where they may question, okay, how much more is this of this am I going to endure? And how many more slides are there? That's the first advantage. And I would say the second advantage is to give your audience the impression that you are so prepared, you are so much in control that you feel absolutely comfortable in letting them decide the flow of the presentation.
Ooh, nice.
And in my mind, when I think about this, of course, I'm not talking about a public speaking that you're using a presentation to 100 people. Probably the scenario in my mind is you're a department manager and you're presenting to the board of the company you work for on a, let's say, monthly in a monthly review, or in an important company meeting.
Okay.
And it's not a large setting. There are maybe 5 to 10 key people in front of you, and you're in a line of other presenters, presenting quarterly results, let's say, of your department. In this situation, I think it would gain you some points to be able to say, dear members of the board, not say these in words per se, but give the impression that I'm so prepared for this experience that I am able to let you actually dictate the flow of the presentation. So I think those would be the two advantages.
Okay, good idea. All right, so we've the two tools that you're going to tell us about today. One is sections, and the other is slide zoom. And the first one, sections, we've talked about that a little bit before, and so I'm pretty familiar with how sections can contribute to this. But we have never on this podcast talked about slide zoom. So I am really looking forward to hearing about the use of slide zoom to achieve this. So where shall we start? Shall we start with sections?
Let's start with the slide zoom, because section is a broader thing which will encompass the slide zoom. So slide zoom is something that is added to the PowerPoint in the recent versions. I don't remember when, but maybe a year or two. It's not that old.
Okay.
And what it enables you to do is to jump between slides in the presentation. Now, this is nothing new, by the way. I mean, we used to be able to do that before by using links, or I think they were called bridges at the time.
Okay.
And you could do that. Like, you could jump from slide 82 to 88 to back to 46, but you would have to do this manually. You would have to insert items onto the slides to say, okay, if I click on this, go to that slide, and on that slide, if I click on that, come back to this slide, etc. It was tedious, laborsome work. The end goal would probably be the same. But
Okay.
now it has become so much easier to do that.
Mhm.
And in that regard, I want to give you a possible scenario for using that.
Okay.
Let's say it's your turn to do the presentation, and you're the export manager of a company, and you're presenting to the board, and you start the presentation by saying, okay, normally without using this tool, you say, okay, today we're going to talk about our country-based sales goals and how we are doing with them.
Mhm.
And you have 4 countries. Let's say you have Germany, Ireland, Austria, and Italy that your company sells to.
Okay.
And what normally happens is you go over each slide, each country, talk about that, and then move to the, for example, the factory slide or the production slide that has to do with another department in your
Mhm.
company.
Okay.
So the traditional way is, okay, we're going to talk about these 4 countries,
Mhm.
and here they are. Country
Okay.
number 1, you talk about it 5-10 minutes. Country number 2, country number
Mhm.
3, 4, etc., etc.
Mhm.
The alternative that I'm proposing by using this tool called Slide Zoom is to create, for example, a summary slide
Okay.
where you have 4 country flags, let's say, and percentages next to them. So it's a very simple slide. You have
Mhm.
4 flags of the country with corresponding percentages of having met your goals. So let's say in Germany you have 56%, in Italy 78%, etc., etc. You show that slide
Mhm.
and you ask the people in front of you, okay, this is the snapshot of our goals met in the countries that we are exporting to.
Mhm.
Would you like to go into detail per country? Would you like to see what is going on in each country? Or would you like to move to the production section of the presentation?
Okay.
And you give them the ball. And they can say, for example, well, in Italy, okay, it's 78%. Let's take a look at what went well there.
Mhm.
And you say, okay, very well. You click, actually, for this, you need to use your mouse. You
Okay.
click on the Italian flag, and the software automatically zooms into the slide where you have everything mentioned about Italy.
Okay.
And you can talk about that. You can talk about that for 1 minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, independent from the necessity. You can talk how much ever you like. When you're done talking about Italy, you click next, and the software takes you back to that executive summary slide with the flags.
Okay.
And now you can ask, okay, that was Italy. For example, would you like to talk about another country?
Mhm.
And at this point, they may say, okay, let's take a look at Austria. And so you repeat the process. You click on the Austrian flag, you go to Austria slide, you talk about it, and you come back. And at this point, they may say, okay, this is enough. Let's continue with the presentation.
Okay.
Instead of talking about all these 4 countries, which they may or may not be interested, we don't know that, because maybe they will say, okay, let's take a look at each country. Okay, that's fine. We can do that.
Okay.
Or they may say, okay, this is enough. Let's continue with the presentation.
Okay.
I mean, to be able to do that, again, gives you the possibility of touching on the points that they want to touch, and nothing more or nothing less, and be able to move with the presentation,
Mhm.
and give you the technical possibility of doing this with few clicks. Again,
Okay.
you used to be able to do this before, but it was a tedious and laborsome work, and now it has become much easier. That's
Mhm.
why I would recommend the use of this tool called Slide Zoom.
Okay. And we don't have time today to give people, a screenshot by screenshot example of how to use Slide Zoom. So let's just give them at least the starter commands. At the top level, at the ribbon, for example, where would you
Yeah.
in PowerPoint, where would you find the menu items to make this happen?
Well, it's under Insert.
Mhm.
There's a new tab called, no, it's not a new tab. Under the Insert tab, there's a new button called Zoom.
Okay.
And when you click on that, you actually get 3 options, like Summary Zoom, Section Zoom, or Slide Zoom.
Okay.
So what you do is you click on the Slide Zoom, and it asks you, okay, which slides do you want to zoom in?
Mhm.
And let's say in this case, I select the slides of the countries like Germany, Ireland, Austria, Italy. I select those 4 slides. And what it does is it creates individual images of those slides and inserts them onto the slide that I'm working on.
Okay.
So now you have on the slide that you're working on 4 images of those individual slides that you want to link to. And these are live links, by the way. You can click on them, and they are live images, which means when you update something on the destination slide, it is automatically reflected on this summary slide that you will be using the images. What I do after that is go ahead and replace those images with country flags. So now I end up with live links of country slides represented by country flags. And during a live presentation, when you click on each one of them, they individually go to the corresponding destination slides, which is represented by those flags.
Okay.
So that will be under Insert, Zoom, Zoom, and under that, it would be Slide Zoom.
Okay. And the other technique that you've mentioned before is sections. Tell us more about sections. Tell us more about that.
Okay. It's actually under the same button. Again, under Insert, there is a Zoom, and under Zoom, there is the Section Zoom. What Section Zoom does is basically the same with Slide Zoom, but on a broader level. So with Slide Zoom, you go to individual slides. With Section Zoom, what you can do is divide your presentation into sections. For example, let's say you have 4 sections. Yeah, let's say, again, you're making a quarterly business review, and there are 4 sections. Like you have the quarterly report, you have the report about the team, you have a SWOT analysis, and let's say you have a suggested actions section in your presentation.
Okay.
And let's say you have 100 slides in your presentation, and well, for the sake of clarity, let's say each section consists of 25 slides. What you can do in PowerPoint is divide your presentation into 4 sections of 25 slides each, call them, give them individual names, and then what you can do in the beginning of the presentation is use the section zoom to tell PowerPoint which slides are your section headers, let's say.
Okay.
And insert them into the slide. So when you go to the presentation mode, you will have, again, 4 images representing the section headers of that you mentioned, that you determined in the presentation.
Okay.
So now when you click on them, it will go to those corresponding slides, which will represent the beginning of each section.
Okay. Okay. Nice.
So instead of telling your audience, okay, we're going to talk about the first part, and then the second part, and the third part, and then the fourth part.
Okay.
You give them the opportunity to be able to say, look, for us, actually, the SWOT analysis is the most important one. So let's start with that section. Okay. So when you click on that, you suddenly find yourself in the beginning of the third section of the presentation, which would be the 51st slide, let's say.
Okay.
And in order to do this, you don't have to exit the slideshow. You don't have to scroll. You don't have to show your screen. You don't have to go back and restart the slideshow and everything. This is all in front of you. What it does is it gives you, again, these are live links as well. So any update you make on the section header slide will be reflected automatically on this executive summary page. So what you can do is you click on the SWOT analysis section, you go there, you present those 25 slides, and when it is over, you come back to the first slide with your live links.
Okay.
And then you can ask again, okay, that was the third section. Which one would you like to continue with?
And you mentioned this earlier, a few minutes ago, but tell us again the menu options. Tell us again, how would we, just on a high level, what tabs on the ribbon would we click to make this happen?
Well, before clicking on the tabs, I need to mention that the section zoom requires you to have sections determined beforehand. So on a regular presentation, you have, let's say, 20 slides from 1 to 20. But first, in order to be able to use this, you need to create sections. So you tell the software, for example, my slides, my slides between 1 and 6 are my first section.
Okay.
My slides between 7 and 10 are my second section. So you tell the software, okay, my presentation consists of 4 sections, and these are the slides that correspond to each section.
Okay.
And you do that by selecting the slides. For example, let's say you're using the what's it called? I'm going to check that. The slide sorter. Okay, let's say you're using PowerPoint, and in slide sorter you're seeing all your slides. So in that view, you select the slides that you want to dedicate as a section.
Okay.
You select them, you right click, for example, and in that you can say add section.
Okay.
What that does is create a new section, and you can give it a name.
Okay.
So first you need to do those.
Okay.
When you have established which sections are going to include which slides, then you go to insert, again, the same part under the main menu. You go to zoom, and now you will have the section zoom active, because if you don't have sections determined in your presentation, you're not going to see that.
Okay.
And now you click on the section zoom, and what it will bring you is a window with those sections that you determined, and then you will be able to choose what they are, and it will give you the opportunity to insert those into the slide, and you will be able to use them as live links.
Nice. And a third technique that you mentioned, and we won't have time to go into it today, so we'll reserve this for a future episode. But you mentioned that this can also be accomplished with morphs. And I think morphs are immensely cool, but I haven't seen them used a lot for these nonlinear presentations. So I am totally looking forward to hearing about how to use morphs to accomplish the nonlinear presentation.
Yeah, morph seems to have a lot of uses which can put to good practice. And on a different episode, we can talk about them, including how it can give you the tools to do nonlinear presentations to increase the interactivity. You're definitely right about that.
All right, so that about wraps it up for today. And is there before we close up for the day, is there anything else that you want to add?
I'm sure there are, but we'll save them for another episode.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Alper, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank
bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.